So, hello everyone. I believe we are live now. This is Lloyd De Jongh, and I'm here with the Patriotic Christian, also known as Roan. And I had him on with the Thunderous One on Sunday. It was a really good conversation about what's happening in the UK. And today we're back, just a one-on-one. And as we all know, the truth is under fire in the UK. There's heavy government censorship. There are very deep concerns that the current UK government under Keir Starlin is socialist. And yeah, and also we've got to look at what do we do as Christians and how does a Christian respond to this? How do you defend freedom? And of course, there is always the insidious problem of Islam. So very welcome back, Ron.
Thank you ever so much for having me back.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Good to have you. Yep. So yeah, the floor is yours. I mean, you can let us know how things are. But just before we begin, I this is a different platform that I'm using. It's not the one that I'm typically on. So this is a test of a new platform that I'm running today. And while we are live, let me see. I cannot see the comments in the chat, so I'll be watching those separately in a separate window. I've got to figure out all this. I'm using the free version, which is very limited, so I won't have the same features as StreamYard. Next month, I plan to subscribe. So yeah, Ron, tell us what's going on in the UK. What is happening? People are very concerned, and speech is being chilled and muzzled. People are being fast-tracked to prison for saying hurty words. Of course, while we can see that if you're a well-known person who purchases child abuse to do with SEGGX images, you will get a 6-month suspended sentence and sent on your way.
That's right. So, what we've seen here is a tyrannical, authoritative, totalitarian state where we've had the powers of the Labour government taking over, the Labour Party, sorry, taking government, and Keir Starmer, or as you would call him, Stalin, he has many names now, has completely gone against what he was promising the people in his manifesto, which politicians do anyway. But he has gone
Mm-hmm.
on to what we were predicting on us. When I say we, I'm talking about the majority of the British public who were more in line with the manifesto of the Conservative Party or Reform UK. And we were warning people about this. We were warning mainly the left that this type of stuff will happen. There'll be protests, there'll be riots, there'll be blasphemy laws before long, and most of the public at first they were laughing in our faces, saying this wouldn't happen, this can't happen. And as soon as Keir Starmer has come into power, he has cancelled. He cancelled the Rwanda scheme, so that basically gave an indication that we're going to be seeing open borders. We're going to see mass immigration on a level that the UK has never seen, and we are already seeing a massive influx of immigrants or immigration, illegal and legal, like none ever before. And those who have been speaking against it or trying to speak against it, especially when the attacks happened in Southport, they got slammed as far right thugs by the Labour politicians, particularly Keir Starmer. And he brought in stringent laws, made them active almost immediately to lock up people who were speaking up against the establishment. Now, the type of the style of governance that he has done in British politics is exactly like what you would see in North Korea, Russia, or China, a communist state. And it's quite worrying for us who live in a democracy because none of us have voted for this. We've lived freely. It's our God given right to be able to protest, it's our God given right to use our freedom of speech. However, there are some certain words or sentences that Labour doesn't like the opposition or people who are against them talking about. And this could be anything to do with subjects like Islam, immigration, patriotism, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what we recognize as those who love this country, history, warts and all, that are being targeted by this communist state. So these laws that were brought in, particularly recently, were to target those. that were taking part in the protests. Now, some that were taking part violently, and I don't condone any violence, and it's a shame that I have to say this because if I don't, then I could face prosecution. But I don't condone violence, and I don't condone those who were throwing missiles, bricks, and setting fire to hotels. However, the majority, the majority of the people that were protesting in a peaceful fashion. And we have seen people, old age pensioners, people with disabilities, people who have not committed a crime in their life, be locked up for stupid amounts of time, being with, and most of them were done live as well for people to watch. So you had the embarrassment of the whole nation
Hmm.
watching you be sentenced, and they know who you are. And the problem with this is as well, they're going into a place that is heavily populated by immigrants that have come over here, committed crime, that believe in a certain prophet Muhammad. So our prisons are already bursting at its seams. There's hardly any space there. And the prisons are filled with radicalization gangs of Islam. And these people, these old age pensioners, disabled people, people who have mainly paid into a system all their lives without committing any crime whatsoever, have been thrown into the lion's den with them for saying something that the Labour Party doesn't like or Keir Starmer doesn't like, but also for sharing memes on Facebook, for saying things when they were angry on Twitter. And let's get this straight. We all say things that we don't mean at times in
Hmm.
a moment when we're angry. And when we're talking about a subject like three young girls being stabbed and hacked to death at a Taylor Swift yoga class, this type of subject is very sensitive, and it is one that will enrile the people as it is, because people have had enough. They have had enough of this country of seeing overseas criminals, unvetted fighting aged men, come into this country, refuse to assimilate, refuse to integrate with our culture and our values, attack
Hmm.
our women, attack our children, and get away with it. It's bad enough with the crime as it is, but it's worse because they're getting away with it, and the two-tier policing and judiciary system are letting them reap havoc, get their own way, without doing absolutely anything for the cause of locking them up or seeing them prosecuted. Yet, when the British or concerned citizens of the public say something out of jest or say something whilst intoxicated, maybe, they get locked up immediately without any kind of caution, warning, anything like that. No second chance. And the worst
No
part,
consideration of any priors of any type, as you said.
exactly. And the worst example we have of this was an 11-year-old child who was arrested only a week or two ago from his own house and taken out of the arms of his mother by the police. And this is becoming more frequent, and it's making more people in the UK angry. So what we're seeing in effect here is a stewing pot of anger, and the comments and the actions of the Labour government are just feeding into this pot, making it more hotter, filling it up more with more ingredients, and eventually this pot is going to explode. So they're not doing anyone any favors, they're not doing themselves any favors, and unfortunately, it's us, the British public, who are left to suffer.
It's frightening. I know the Labour government is apparently, at the moment, the worst polling government, I think, in modern history, and they've slipped into negative numbers in the polling. So in less than 2 months, they've gone from lukewarm to absolutely negative. And yeah, obviously, people also rejected the Tories, your conservatives,
Mm.
because they had promised to deal with the major immigration issue, and they'd failed to do so. In fact, it ramped up heavily under their leadership. And of
Yes.
course, you were left then with the alternative. So there was not just a matter of they wanted the Labour government. I wouldn't say that. There's also the issue of wanting to punish the Conservatives. But
That's
now the cure is worse than the disease was, or the cure is worse than the original problem was.
Indeed, exactly. And I mean, the left, and Labour, and anyone who voted for Labour, they'll continuously brag about how they won by a landslide. However, they had the lowest turnout that any election has ever seen in British history, but also the amount of votes that Labour has ever taken in history. So, to be honest, people weren't keen on them getting in, and you'll only see the radical left and people from what you would call the BAME community, although people don't use that label anymore, that were voting for them. The majority that sit on the centre of politics, or centre right, or right wing, refused to go and vote, or didn't voted for Reform. And Reform UK took in 4 million votes in their first ever election, which is absolutely astonishing. They did really well, but they
Yeah.
didn't, because of the way the system works. They only managed to get 5 seats. So it's not fair. They nearly, I think, they weren't far off having the same amount, or they did have more than the.
Nearly the same amount of seats as the next largest party,
Yes,
and yet the other party has over 100 seats, and they have only five, even though they've got nearly the same number of votes.
that's it. The Liberal Democrats, exactly. And it doesn't make sense, which is why Nigel Farage himself has said that we do need a different voting system, or something needs to change. But regardless of that, is some of these draconian laws that Keir Starmer has brought in with his buddies weren't ever explained or warned to us by themselves. So it was mainly the British public, people like myself and people like Paul Thorpe, who have YouTube
Mhm.
platforms, that were warning the public what could happen, what will happen if this goes on. And I remember the election night specifically. I did a special election night special on my YouTube channel, and I was getting in excess of 1,000 people watching live. And this was
Mhm.
early hours in the morning. And I remember saying to everyone, you do know that if Labour do get in, when Keir Starmer gets the keys to this Downing Street, the whole system's going to change. And in a couple of months, it will only take a couple of months, we'll see riots, protests. We're going to see restrictions on freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and blasphemy laws. I said, you name it, it's coming. Everyone thought I was insane for saying that. And yet,
Right.
look where we
How
are.
did you know he was going to go down this road?
You just have to look at what a communist or a socialist would want to do. And not only that, there was hints anyway. If you look at the conversations Keir Starmer has had in the past with people from the, what you call it, Economic Forum, the World
The
Economic,
WEF, yeah, World
WEF,
Economic Forum, yeah,
um,
the Klaus
and
Schwab guys, yeah.
that's it, yeah, Schwab, and also conversations he's had with the like of the London Mayor Sadiq Khan about Islam and Islamism. He,
I
the
really detest that term Islamism. It's a false term. It's a contrived word. It's Islam. It's Muslims. Islamism is an attempt to create a dichotomy or separation between Muslims who are doing very Muslim, Orthodox Muslim things like terrorism, blowing things up, and so on, and from the peaceful ones. And however, you don't see these peaceful ones preventing this. You don't see them acting as a bulwark against that. This is part and parcel of the ideology, and whether an individual Muslim agrees with it or supports it or not, it is still very much a fundamental part and mandatory within Islamic doctrine. So it's just Islam, it's Muslims, and this is a Muslim problem. I
of
mean, we
course.
don't see that. You don't see that any other group gets a pass by saying, "Well, it's just Buddhismism, it's just Christianism,"
Mhm.
which to make a distinction from regular Christians and extra crispy. There's no such distinction.
Yeah. So since Keir Starmer's been in power, and bear in mind he hasn't been in power long. We're talking 2 to 3 months. We've
51
seen
days or something, 52 days.
we've seen new laws that have put away some of the most vulnerable people in our British public for sharing memes or speaking up against the establishment. We've seen our prisons be emptied out with criminals, people who have killed babies and been put away for manslaughter. We've seen abusers of domestic violence be released on the streets, or celebrating drinking champagne. We have seen an attack on the hospitality industry by them banning smoking outdoors in pubs and restaurants across the UK.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
another thing they're bringing in. They're also, today, we're only just talking about even changing the size of pints in pubs to 3/4 pints because there's a drinking problem in the UK. So what we're seeing is this whole tightening up on all our freedoms. So freedom to drink, freedom to eat, anything that we do, they want complete control over. And they'll say it in the most nicest forms and put it in legislation in a nice way so people don't see it as that. So
Hmm.
what we're seeing now is commentators like GB News, Talk TV, they are bringing this up, but they're bringing it up in a way that doesn't really make sense to the majority of the British public. So you have to kind of be the middleman between the British public and an independent news source to try and reach out to the public to say, this is what's going on, this is what will happen.
Yeah.
So the only good thing that's come out of this is the rise of independent journalism and how well it's working, because now the BBC, Sky News, and other platforms like that, no one's interested in, because even the media working alongside the establishment, they have gone against the British public. They're lying to us. People can see it. They've had enough. They don't pay them attention no more. So that
Right.
which has even encouraged them to go even worse with their lies. So the ones that they have left will believe the narrative that they're putting on people. But
Right.
the UK is completely wrecked, Lloyd. In all fairness, the establishment are pandering to Islam. Um, the British public are being trampled on. We've seen, as again, another thing that's happened is the winter fuel payment be taken off the old age pensioners. So there's going to be people in
Got
this.
to pay for, you have to pay for green projects and electronics workshops in countries that are wealthier than Britain. There's no other choice,
Yep.
you know?
And
So, which is completely hypocritical. And then together, there's always there's the new argument now that well, we need migrants because the workforce and because the economy. But when you look at the cost to the economy, so sure, there's a certain amount of money they might raise from labor or jobs or whatever. However, every single migrant apparently costs the UK something like £500,000 over their lifetime pounds.
yeah,
So now you're looking at this multiplied by tens of millions. The cost overwhelmingly is greater than any benefit. And in fact, the benefit accrues to the migrant. The migrant gets free welfare. You, as a
yeah,
British tax-paying citizen who's born and raised there, generations of family, you don't get free healthcare. You don't get free accommodation. You don't get a doctor on call who's down the street or in the same building. You don't get free cell phones, free food, food vouchers, free heating. And these are things that are given to people that just literally walk off a boat.
yeah. And some of them have the nerve to call it jizya from when the UK or another European country will inevitably become an Islamic state. We've seen this with Andrew Chowdhury and other Islamic commentators in the past. Um, my fears for at the moment, especially over winter, is how the OAPs are going to survive because, like you said, we've got money going out overseas on these climate projects, which won't take place till 2030. So the money's not going to be spent yet. We've also got money invested in this British energy or GB energy, which again hasn't got off the ground yet. It's not
Mhm.
working, and they're investing money in this pie, that pie, and pies overseas. Yet they won't even look after the most vulnerable in our
And
society.
it's insane that they're spending literally billions, but a tiny fraction of that, a really tiny fraction, would cover old age pensioners. And they're not willing to do that for their own people. They're more concerned about issues in foreign countries that are uninterested in the welfare of Britain. So,
Exactly.
yeah. In building solar panels, and yeah, Andrew says, and building solar panels on good farmland. I have flown over areas of Europe where you see the most horrendous solar farms
Mm,
destroying farmland, and also these solar panels are toxic at the end of the day.
yeah,
They use massive amounts of land, and they I don't know if they can be recycled. And yeah, it's incredible. And of course, it's been a failure. Germany is deindustrializing.
Mm.
Germany is has now slipped out of the top 20 industrial wealthiest countries in the world. Germany is now dropping. And of course, energy has what quadrupled in Germany because they cannot provide energy to heavy industry. Heavy industry is leaving. You've got Volkswagen that's failing. You've got ThyssenKrupp, the steel manufacturer that doesn't have the energy because unreliables like solar and wind cannot provide the kind of energy that industry needs. And of course, it's they're now moving to Texas, I believe, and you've got issues of this type. So yeah, and Britain, your energy minister, I can't remember his name offhand now, he wants to do exactly the same thing, exactly the same failed policies. Because free energy was supposed to lower energy costs, make it more available, and give us abundant energy. That has not happened. It's only made things worse.
No,
So
exactly. Uh,
yeah, and also yeah, one massive. There's an interesting photo I saw online of a massive solar farm. It was incredible, but there was a hailstorm and it destroyed the lot. So now
yeah.
you've got this toxic effect of the stuff leaching into the ground, and yeah,
It makes me laugh. I've had arguments with people about immigration on the left. I've had arguments about climate change on the left, and you'll have the same people who believe in human rights and international human rights pander about climate change and we need more electric cars. Yet when you tell them about the African children that they're killing in countries to dig up the what do you call it? Is it lithium or whatever?
lithium and nickel. You need
Yeah,
lithium and
lithium and
nickel.
nickel
Yeah,
to make the actual batteries for the electric cars. They don't haven't got a clue what to say. And it's
yeah.
the same with the immigration. When you talk about the level of immigration that's happening, the amount of money that's being spent, but when you boil it down to per capita per person, is immigration better off for society? It shows a completely different story. So it's yeah, the arguments they don't align. Yet we're seeing those that believe in this stuff in power. Which is
Yeah.
concerning.
Now, also Malaysia has the largest reserves of lithium, which are necessary, which are very critically necessary for solar panels and also these wind turbines. And Malaysia is cutting up massive amounts of trees from their
You
forests.
see how they're made, how they're in the production line of things overseas in these countries where people are literally dying from raking up what they have to rake up and the extreme hours they're
Yeah,
working to do it. It's insane. But
yeah.
if you present a video like this to the public, the government will come after you and say it's a load of lies, and it's just like nobody wants to talk about it neither, which is the big issue. It's only on certain channels that you have to search for that people will actually speak about these
Well,
topics.
one benefit is I live in Poland, and I guess the Polish government, in that, at least in that sense,
Yeah.
is quite happy to have people say what they like. Question: a couple of things on Reform Party and Nigel Farage, because I sent you those questions, and there's a handful of sort of themes I was looking at, so I'll throw some themes out. But Nigel Farage has thrown Tommy Robinson under the bus a number of times, refuses to discuss him, to acknowledge the Islam issue. And there's lots of concerns. I know even Paul Thorpe has voiced issues, and so have others. Richard Inman and others have also mentioned that, look, reform is the only option we have right now. It's the
Mhm.
best of of the lot. However, they do acknowledge reform's limitations, weaknesses, the blind spots that they refuse to acknowledge or deal with or address. Or what are the concerns and the issues there? Because I like Nigel Farage. He was great in the EU issue and the Brexit, but he does have a serious blind spot, and he also seems to refuse to want to deal with certain issues and upset the apple cart. So he's trying to play both sides.
Yeah, definitely. So my thoughts on Nigel Farage and Tommy. I mean, Tommy to me, he's a national hero. He's the only person in this country that has a platform that is speaking the truth. He is speaking the minds of the majority of the British public here. Most people didn't know much about Islam before Tommy came on scene, and when he's described certain topics about from Islam and migration that has woken up the masses, if you like, and it's become a great concern of the British public. This has been made known, and the politicians they wish not to talk about it because they feel they could offend people in this way, or they might lose the Muslim vote, they might lose the votes from the left. So what you've got from this is you've got Tommy who's saying exactly what Nigel Farage is thinking, but Nigel Farage is saying the complete opposite and condemning Tommy Robinson and even sacking people out of the party, because there was someone who was forced to leave only the other day for making a video saying he was wrong about Tommy and that he doesn't believe Tommy Robinson is a racist anymore, that he
Mhm.
was only believing what he was told by the mass media like BBC. And he had done an investigation of himself, watched the documentaries Tommy Robinson and Urban Scoop have produced, and realized he is not racist. He's telling the truth. So he made a video explaining himself and that he's not racist. Tommy's not racist, and he would like to get in touch with him to apologize. And then he's lost his job as a candidate for Reform UK just for doing that. So that shows me Reform UK, they're not really that big on freedom of speech as they keep going on about. Now, Nigel Farage, as many other politicians, they are backed by multi-millionaire companies and people in the backgrounds that we don't know so much about. So he's going to have to be careful with what he says. However, like we were saying before we come on, his actual opinion could be different. So in regards to what you were saying just now, reform is probably the only best bet that we do have in the UK. I totally agree. It is the only one that is known. I mean, of course, we've got smaller independent parties like UKIP, that's still about, and there's other parties as well, Christian
Mhm.
political parties. However, they're mainly in small little towns that nobody's heard of, so they haven't got that public outreach yet to reach the places where the numbers will matter. So reform, yes, they're the only ones that are close enough to deal with the problem or want to deal with the problems that we are facing. However, I believe personally they wouldn't be as extreme enough as what the country needs to go back to its original ways. So, as far as I'm concerned now, unless a new political party comes up or an independent MP comes around magically, we are not going to see the same Britain what we once knew 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. You may need a martyr, and I mean, this is not something to celebrate, or it's just something one has to say with caution. Because now I'm going to speak like a Brit who's living under these new British free speech laws, but it may take a martyr for the British people to wake up and say enough and draw that line. I mean, if Tommy Robinson went to prison and then accidentally, I don't know, fell out of a window, 8 stories up, or which we all know that that's what they want to
Of
happen to him.
course, yeah.
The establishment wants that for him. But if that were to happen, that may be the cause that everyone rallies around and that eventually wakes up the population. It could have impact across Europe and across the world because he is one of the foremost free speech voices, I think, around the world. And he's a hero to many. So I think there's a two-edged sword if they suppress him or they kill him or something of that type, you know, this could be the catalyst that actually causes their undoing.
Definitely. I mean, Tommy said himself, this is exactly what it's going to take. In fact, he said on many videos, quite recently, that those that have been arrested for petty crimes to do with the protests, that have spoken out their voices and vented their frustration, they are martyrs. And he said that, and it will take this for people to start waking up. Now, personally, Lloyd, I don't think it's a question of has the British public woken up. I wholeheartedly believe that the masses are awake. However, we haven't got anything to work towards yet. There's not a mission to go by. So there's not an election.
Right.
There's not an election to vote for. There's not a well, we have a movement now which will attend the next rally that is held by Tommy Robinson on the 26th. But we don't have reform saying, right, we need to get together and take over the streets of London until
Yeah.
this changes, or we need to have a general strike until Keir Starmer leaves. And personally, if it was me, if I was someone that had as many followers as Nigel Farage or any other politician, if I was to have that
Yeah.
platform, I would call for a general strike. That's what I
Yep.
would do. I would get the ball in running right now before it's too late.
Here in Poland, and I'm given the Cliff's Notes version I've given you on my experiences here in Poland. It's not always necessarily positive, but that said, in Poland they've got very clear priorities of God, family, country, and vodka. So in UK, you might need to. I mean, I'm surprised that Nigel Farage doesn't bang his hand on the table and talk about God, family, country, the British flag.
He's not.
You
He's
don't.
yeah. He's not Christian. That's the problem. He's. I mean, he does believe in the Christian culture, which is one thing he has spoken of in the past. But his mantra, if you like, is family, community, and patriotism, or something like that. Family, community, and family, community, culture. That's what I believe he said it is.
Which culture? That's kind of woolly. That's very woolly because the Poles are the Polish language, Polish food, the Polish flag, Polish history, Polish culture, Polish borders. It's they're very clear, they're very distinct about that, and you know yeah, but I think you need a flag to rally around, and of course you can't have the benefits of Christian culture without having Christian culture.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. But we need. There was someone which I repeated in the last stream that we said that I remember that one verse someone took to the stage in the last rally in July and said we need renaissance, reform, and renewal in the church, in the establishment, in politics, in everything. And that's the only way that things are going to change or are going to
Yeah.
get better.
Yeah, but the British Church, I'm sorry, I come out of the Anglican Church since childhood, and I have very highly ranked clerics in the Anglican Church in my family, and the Anglican Church has become the church of the gay.
Of
It
course,
has become the church of the LGBT. It's become the church of
woke.
let's have a rave in the nave. This is what's happened. I mean, it has lost its way.
Yeah,
It's no longer a moral force. It's no longer a guiding force. It's a. But also, if you go back to Henry VIII, I mean, the church effectively was a tool of the state. The state very much has its thumb on the church, and it serves the state. So it's not really an independent organization. It's not really guided by any kind of Christian morals, as I can see, because I walked away from it years ago
yeah.
because I thought all of this stuff. I mean, gay priests, LGBT women
I
priests,
am. We are all Muslim. Yeah, we've
we're
said
all Muslims. I was like, no, look, sorry, no, that's not where we stand. And I don't think the church is a good. I mean, where does that leave one, given that quandary?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, more recently we have seen a change in regards to the Church of England, but only that's to do with more of the lines of business. Many churches have been sold out or renovated into mosques. We see this all across Europe. In fact, France is probably the worst for this, but especially with church fires. Churches are under attack across Europe. France, like I said, is the worst at the moment. They're seeing their fair share of their buildings being destroyed. But here in the UK, it's more of a thing where the Muslims are buying the churches. They're buying the ones that need to be knocked down that are listed, which can't be knocked down. So, and then they're looking to renovate them. So, I mean, they even tried buying an island just outside of the UK
Hmm.
to turn into an Islamic state, which is quite concerning. Um, However, the church recently backed itself because there was this one that they were going to try and buy. I can't remember where it was. But the Church of England's leaders got involved and they said it's not going to happen. Basically, this is our church. We've had enough of you buying all our buildings. So people are beginning to speak up, but again, we have that fear. It's that fear that if those who are at the top of the church or at top of the ladder, as you would say, if they was to say anything out of line or say something that the establishment don't agree with, they can see themselves out of a job. They'll see themselves without their parish or
Hmm.
locked up with the new draconian laws that are in place. So it's stepping on eggshells continuously, whether you're in the Church of England, whether you're in the establishment, media, you name it. You're constantly having to align yourself with the narrative of the establishment and the press. And if you don't,
Hmm.
then you're a target.
Yeah, no. Do you see the something I'm noticing though is that I see more and more discussion by political commentators and social commentators on the need for Christianity, the need for Christian community and Christian values. It's like they realize this is the thing that's missing. This is the glue that binds everything together. That all of our values come out of the Christian church. So I do see more of this. I see people noticing the loss or the lack, and starting to say, "Hold on, but this thing is missing, and something else is coming to fill in that space." Even Richard Dawkins, as incredibly ignorant as that man can be,
Mm.
has noticed this. I mean, he still goes and he still, despite making these statements, he still goes and attacks Christianity whenever he can. But that said, he realizes that he wouldn't want to live under Muslim culture, and in fact, Muslims don't want to either. They all come
Well,
here. So
but saying that, and I mean, it's all well and good Richard Dawkins changing his mind now. It looks more inevitable that the Europe may fall to Islam, and unless they start pulling their socks up. Richard Dawkins has been one of the contributing factors why people have left Christianity and
yes.
stayed away from the church. So Richard Dawkins, along with Stephen Fry, I can't remember his name now, who's passed away, but he was
Yeah.
good. I enjoyed watching him. Christopher Hitchens. I enjoyed watching him when he spoke about Islam. However, he also had the same attack and level of attack as he
Hmm.
did on Islam with Christianity. But those main three are probably the main reason people have turned away and turned their backs on the church. And this is I've said this so many times. When you turn your back on God, He turns His back on you, and we're seeing this like on a scale, but with nations. And we've read in the Bible so many times as Christians what happens when a nation goes against God's will. What happens? He
They're
pours
punished.
out His wrath, and it's like you see this continuous pattern of humans. They don't go back to the original ways. They don't learn from their mistakes. They don't listen or have that faith and strong enough to know that history will repeat itself unless things change. So atheism is too big now. It's going to stick around. We need now, which I believe will happen, people like Tommy or people.
No, atheism has become, in many cases, a joke. You look at the new atheism. That was such a big movement. It got infiltrated by the LGBT, and it became a complete laughingstock. And now, when you look at all of these crazy LGBT, non-scientific, anti-scientific, unscientific dogmas that are floating around, those are all atheists.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
atheism is now supporting crazy claims that men can have babies, and I'd love to see that happen personally, but I
And
don't
they're
think
writing
it's.
that into science now, Lloyd. That's what I mean. So does
Yeah.
it shows people already that should we have believed what we believed when we were at school then? Because if they're writing stuff like that now, that a man can have periods, how do we know you weren't lying to us about the Big Bang or anything like that or evolution? So
Well, yeah, I think they will lying about evolution, but that's a story for another day.
yeah, of
I
course.
mean, I've covered Darwin at length. I've covered Darwin at length on my channel. I've done maybe 20 hours on Darwin, covering information about Darwin's life, his beliefs that are, oddly enough, very much heavily inspired by Islamic mythology and Sufi myths and poetry and such. So he was actually gleaning a lot of his ideas from
I'm
Sufi
glad you said
Muslim
that because
writers.
I've always thought that as well when I've read
So
it.
again, sorry.
I'm glad you said that because I've never heard anyone else say those things. I've noticed that myself when I've looked into Darwinism as well. It's yeah,
Yeah.
it does come a lot from Islam and its history.
Yeah, I've got like 8 or 9 episodes on Darwin, and it's what 16, 20 hours, whatever it is, and it's Darwin was a psychopath. Darwin was morally bankrupt, morally corrupt. Whatever good he might have said, it was offset by the bad. I mean, he was someone who promoted scientific racism. He created the whole eugenics movement. Everyone likes to say, no, well, it was his cousin, Charles Galton, whatever. No, no, William Galton, whatever it was. No, Darwin said those things. It's been part of his family legacy. All of his kids were involved in the eugenics movement.
Mm.
So it's simply a way to try to rescue Darwin's reputation. But the man spoke of warfare, jihad, Mein Kampf, the struggle to dominate, and the weaker must the weaker must go and the stronger will prevail and take everything you own. And I mean, this was Darwin. It was survival of the fittest, and everyone else, well, just too bad. You got
Unfortunately,
to.
I was one that I didn't believe in Darwinism. But if people asked me when I was an atheist, how did I believe the universe come into existence? I used to just say, "Oh, well, it's all about evolution." I was one of those blinded ones that what you would call a lazy atheist that have never opened the Bible, never looked into science, astrology, or anything like that, and just gone by what everyone else has said and copied what you would see on YouTube when you were
Right.
asked questions. And it was only until when I looked into how the universe could have come in, how complex it was.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it was mainly the complicity of, or how near enough impossible it would be for some of the like gravity being at a certain point that it is. If it was to change it in either direction, that we wouldn't exist. When I was
Yeah.
looking at things like that, the constants, the physical constants, that's when I realised how stupid I was in belief, just
Yeah.
being arrogant and ignorant to the cause. But when you look into these things, it does open your mind.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Darwin was someone who loved to murder animals with a hammer or with rocks or with his bare hands. I mean, Darwin used to love to murder animals since he was a little boy. He would beat,
he beat up a
kill.
rabbit or something. I'm sure I've
Oh
read.
yeah, he loved. Now we know, we've seen movies. We've all heard stories about people that grow up liking to do torturous things and other lethal things to small animals. Right?
Jeffrey
We have a
Dahmer.
name for that. Sorry.
Jeffrey Dahmer's one.
Exactly. So, and Darwin happened to have the same hobbies. Isn't that just a sheer coincidence? And then, of course, you look at the French, I covered the French Revolution. I did my series on socialism and atheism. You look at the French Revolution, that was a socialist atheist revolution. Socialism is an atheist religion modeled on Christianity. Atheism, modern atheism for the last roughly 300 years, is a religion modeled on Christianity, but without, of course, the divine aspects of it. But it's a corruption of Christian ideas. It was a religion. The founders of modern atheism always said it was a religion. It's only recently, since the 80s, when atheists realized they'd gone down the wrong road and they realized, oops, we need to somehow disassociate ourselves from the religious label. But until the 80s, they were always pushing, we're the new religion, we are religion, we're the better religion, those Christians are crazy. But of course, if you look at atheism in political thought, it has been the most murderous ideology of the last 250 years. When you look at socialism, how many people it's killed. You look at the French Revolution, that was an incredibly brutal genocide. So atheism has nothing to offer people, and it's just destructive. And now it's the engine that's powering LGBT craziness. But moving on from that, so this twit again. You've got the Muslim revert. Yeah, what an idiot. So Islam is also dwindling. You will notice that you've got, for instance, take Iran. You've got over 50,000 mosques closed. You've got all of these Muslims that are the apostasy. Have a look at those videos on YouTube. We look at these major Islamic dawah experts talking about the apostasy of, of the flood of apostasy. What do they call it? The tsunami of apostasy. So there seems to be an issue. But also Christianity, oddly enough, the story of Christianity is dwindling. It might be dwindling in a town in Britain. However, Christianity is actually growing in South America. It's growing in Asia. It's growing in Africa. So it's massively ramping up. In fact, it is now the fastest growing religion. Islam loves to make the claim,
Mhm.
but it's actually not true.
No, only
So,
by the demographics of when you talk in concerns of population like increasing. If you want to talk about breeding, yeah, the Muslims they're doing their bit. Of course they are.
yeah.
However,
Also, the Muslim revert is claiming that everybody is born a Muslim.
oh,
You know, reverted to Islam because his soul was originally Islamic. And of course, for the Christians, you need to know that Muslims claim that, of course, Jesus was a Muslim, Moses was a Muslim, David was a Muslim. They weren't Jews. No, 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 that never happened. And of course, and also Muhammad was the very first creature made by Allah. Okay, that's one set of stories. When in another set of stories, Muhammad is a part of Allah. Muhammad is a piece of Allah, literally a piece of the very same essence. Allah took a piece of himself and then that is Muhammad's essence, and then all of the other prophets were tiny, tiny pieces of Muhammad that were taken out and placed into human bodies, and those are this is literally in the Sirah. This is what they
I
teach. This is
know,
what
I
they
know.
are embarrassed about. So they want to claim that everyone was Jesus was a Jew. It's really very simple,
Yeah.
and but Muslims will lie to you whole day, every day about this. We have a question here. Let's just see what that is. Do you think the growth in Islam in the West might be exceeding its decline in Africa and the Middle East? I don't think so. I think that they've got institutionalized support. Look at the LGBT. It's a social contagion, right? But in terms of you had like what 0.2% of the population were involved in that community. Now you've got a social contagion that affects mostly teenage girls, right? It's a social contagion that's pushed by social media. And of course, they need to censor the rest of us because if sanity prevails, if we say no, then of course it will die out very quickly due to public shaming. And they want to destroy the ability for you to shame these people publicly. So I think it's just that media has ramped it up, amped it up. They've infiltrated, so they want to make it seem, they want to make you feel despair. It's part of their strategy. They want to rub it in your face. But when you look at it, the majority is actually very peaceful. This is why we don't riot. This is why we don't tear down statues. This is why we aren't burning things all over the place every weekend like they are. So, but at the end of the day, when you push that sleeping giant and that sleeping giant wakes up, then the
You'll have
minority,
you'll have exploding pages in your hands before you know it.
yeah, yeah. So I'll leave it at. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've looked at some videos that who was it? God Logic, Christian Prince, and some other videos that have been made by Sam Shmoon, who have also commented on this thing of Islam growing in the West and it also failing in the East, which surprised me because you'd think it would be the other way around. But I believe as well that with new Christian commentators and Christian apologists that are coming onto YouTube, coming on the scene now, exposing Islam for what it is and
Yeah.
teaching even Muslims some of the verses that they don't get to hear in Western mosques or in your masjids or whatever you call them. When they learn about these verses, they think, really, is this true? They'll go and speak to their imams, and their imams will say, oh, no, it's not this. And then they come back, and then they'll
Hmm.
talk to someone like David Wood or another apologist, and they'll confirm it. They'll say, look, this hadith, this surah, this ayah. And before you know it, the Muslims they're there leaving. But the only problem is Islam is one of the only religions where you've got death if you leave. So you've got to
Hmm.
guarantee that a community is going to see you out. Your family will actually enjoy doing an honor killing in your name because they love you so much because Islam is such a religion of peace that people are too scared to leave Islam. But there are some that are brave enough that are, and I've always said this in the past when I've spoken on live streams about this before. It's Muslims that convert to Christianity that they're the best Christians. They're the best Christians you'll get because they have literally done what Jesus requested in the Gospels, where he said, "You have to give up absolutely everything for me, and I have not come to bring peace, but to bring a sword." And they've left their families
Give me
because
one sec. Sorry, I'm working with a new system, so I'm still
that's
trying to
okay.
figure out what I'm supposed to do here, and I'm
So you
trying to.
you you know you've seen it in the past, Lloyd. I'm sure where people have in Islam in an Islamic household they've wanted to leave
Mhm.
Islam, and the consequences are that severe that it's going to put a lot of people off of doing so. But even then, with that in mind, you're seeing a decrease in in the Islamic faith as it is anyway, especially in the East, but more so in the West as well, more recently. So as long as the Christian commentators and apologists keep doing what they do on YouTube and other platforms and exposing the lies and the hypocrisies and some of the myths that Islam carries, then it won't
Mhm.
be long before Islam will be in a complete laughing stock.
I'm trying to figure out why my screen is not sharing. I'm not seeing the screen that I'm sharing, and I'm wondering why.
It's not popping up. And what I like as well, Lloyd, as well, is a lot more people in who are not religious or don't really like religion and don't really like looking into it. They're learning a lot more now about Islam because,
Yep.
especially in the West, where we see crimes happening like rape, um, grooming gangs, genital mutilation, stuff like that. When we're seeing things like this take place all the time, concerned citizens are asking themselves why. And statistics don't lie. So when you look at statistics as well of the amount of people who are in prison convicted of a sexual offence, what faith do
Hmm.
they belong to, what demographics do they belong to, and then it ticks all these tallies, you then ask the question, well, what is Islam? Why do they do these things? What do they actually believe in? So we're getting more people look it up. We're getting more people remember even Quran verses. I've got friends now who are atheists who know Quran and ayat, Quran surahs, right, where they can actually say, well, no, it's in this surah and that ayat that this was said in the Quran, and it's quite amazing to see people actually take it all on board so that they can argue back for once. Because one thing that is happening, which you can see on most towns and cities now, is the preaching of Islam by imams and dawah teams, and you're seeing tents pop up out of nowhere saying Jesus is a Muslim or Moses was a Muslim, and you go over to their stores to have a conversation. They're giving you free Qurans, free books here, there, and everywhere, and yeah, they're trying to get people on board that way, but people are
What I
arming
find
themselves
crazy
with
is
knowledge.
I've seen Christian preachers get arrested for talking about Jesus,
Mm.
talking about the gospel, discussing the Bible in the UK, and
Yet you can
yet
call for
I've
jihad and
never.
intifada.
But you can have a Quran tent and hand out free Qurans, and it's not a problem. You can talk. Yeah, this is from the Sharia, the Muslim Sharia law. This is from Reliance of the Traveler. Apostasy from Islam is ridda, and whoever voluntarily leaves Islam is killed. I mean, this is what it states in the Muslim law. This is why these things occur, just so you know. And apostasy from Islam, ridda. So let's see. Here we go. Leaving Islam is the ugliest form of unbelief. And when a person who has reached puberty and is sane voluntarily apostatizes from Islam, he deserves to be killed. That's the Arabic portion there. But this is what Islam teaches. It is violent. And without this, people would, I think, just walk away from Islam
Yeah, it
if there
wouldn't
were no
exist.
such consequences. Yeah.
That what if that one verse or one law didn't exist with Islam, it wouldn't exist today. People would stick with it because they don't want to lose their loved ones, their families, their communities, their jobs, their
Yep.
lives, even. So that's why in the Middle East, because these laws are actually imposed, of course you're
Mhm.
going to see Muslim majority countries over there in the Middle East, and although it's not as much in the West, like say here in the UK, if you was to leave, you've got the protection of the law here to look after you. But you still, if you've been brought up a certain way to believe in certain things, and you've been brainwashed that much that
Mhm.
you truly believe that Muhammad flew on a unicorn to the moon, and that Moses punched the angel of death in the face, and that mountains move and suns set in muddy pools, and God knows what else, talking ants, spying birds, you name it. If you believe in that rubbish, then it's going to take a lot to undo that. So that's what I mean. That's why, luckily, we've got places like Speaker's Corner for these conversations to take place.
Right. So the FBI is monitoring who buys Bibles in the US. That is frightening. I'd like to just respond to something. I've got some more questions about that I also prepared for this, but Christian Roman says, Lloyd, I'd like to see you do a collab with Jay Dyer.
Oh, that would be epic.
I just want to mention this, guys. I get this all the time. Lloyd, you need to do a collab with President Joe Biden. Why don't you go on his YouTube channel? You know, why don't you invite him on?
I just emailed
Lloyd, you need to do a collab with the Ayatollah Khomeini or the Pope. Lloyd, you should really just get Elvis on your channel, and you guys need to have a. And
get
I've had
Muhammad on.
people tell me that because you're on YouTube, you're able to go on any channel or get anyone on your channel. I mean, look, just because you live on Earth, you should know Leszek, right? He lives down the street from me. Leszek, right? From Vola. You know him, right? You live on Earth, don't you? You have to know Leszek. No, you don't. So YouTube's a big place. These people don't know me. They don't care about me. Let's be very clear, please. So I
He rose
understand
quite
people
quickly.
mean well. Sorry? Sorry?
He rose quite quickly, though, didn't he, Jake?
He did, yeah. But obviously, he's also doing the shows with Alex Jones, right? The
Oh,
political
I know.
shows with Alex Jones. But that said, the fact that I'm on YouTube doesn't mean I know these people. You'd be amazed how many emails, how many DMs I've sent to people, and 1% of them bothered to contact me back. And many times, I recently had, we had Gurmit Singh, who's one of the founders of the EDL, right? One of the original people, very lovely dog that.
I
And we set 4 dates for him to come on and have this conversation with me as well. And he canceled on me last minute 4 times in a row. Now, now I am expected to believe that he canceled last minute 4 times in a row because he had legitimate reasons. I think that's stretching credibility there. So this happens as well. People cancel on me. That happens, but it's not as easy. Lloyd, you need to get Hatun Tash on, get David Wood on. Look, with some of these people, I may or may not know them, and I may or may not know things that you do not know because I'm in that community to some degree. I know things, I've learned things, I've experienced things. I don't necessarily talk about them, but let's just say that things aren't what you might think it is. So I just want to get that off my chest because people will tell me these things, and it's like I can just call Joe Biden up and, hey Lloyd, get President Trump on. Why don't you go on his channel? It's like, okay,
it'd be nice if you could, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's just not as easy as that. I
it
know.
doesn't work like that. And I've had people
No.
argue with me and tell me, but it does work like that. You just get on the phone. It's like, sure, sure.
The amount of people I've messaged saying, "Look, we fancy doing a stream. Can we talk about this?" And again, same thing. Like they don't even reply, and they read the mail as well. And you'd think, "Oh, this guy surely he'd want to talk about this something like this." But yeah, once you get to a stage with YouTube, I've always seen this with everyone. When you get to a stage of you've got that many people messaging you, wanting to do things with you, and you want to do things with them, and so on and so forth, and you're busy. I get that, but there comes a level of arrogance that goes with it as well. This like I'm better than people as well. So humility completely goes out the window when you, I believe, reach about
Mhm.
half a mil or something like that subscribers. There's people I know that they believe the sun shines out of their backsides because they've got so many followers, money coming in from super thanks stickers, stuff like that.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
won't entertain people with
Al-
20K
yeah.
subs.
Also, I discuss issues on Islam that are uncomfortable for many. So I think I kind of live on that fringe, on that edge. And I mean, if the audience wants to contact these people and encourage them, please do so. But then also, I will say this, and I don't know if I've said this before, I guess, but and I'm known for kind of saying what I think. But a lot of YouTubers that you know are complete assholes. Christian YouTubers are total assholes. Seriously.
Sam Shamoon
So,
could be one as well. I've seen him.
sorry.
Don't get me wrong. I've learned quite a lot from Sam Shamoon. However, he's one of them. He says things that are completely unchristian at times, and he will attack people
Yeah.
in the faith. He will.
Yeah. So yeah, guys. I mean, it's sometimes you just form your own circle and just grow your own thing. And if you want to talk to these people and ask them, sure. I've reached out to a lot of people. I've gotten referrals, and it sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. It's just, and sometimes yeah, you send a lot of emails, you have a discussion, it goes nowhere. It's just how that is. I wish it were that easy. I wish it were that simple. Maybe my channel's not big enough. Maybe if I'm at 200,000, that might be different. But then my politics could be wrong, or I tackle subjects that are too contentious. There are issues there that places people don't want to go. Yeah.
I remember when I first started watching you live, and you came on with Thaddeus on Reason Dancers, and we did that live stream together. I was invited by Thaddeus to come and sit with you on the panel, and
Right.
you were covering teachings from Heavenly Ornaments of Reliance of the Traveller that were talking about the skin between a child's anus and vagina being torn, and if they had to wash or perform ghusl before
Right.
or after. And I remember halfway through the stream when I had to say, I've got to go. And I was gone. You were like, yep, cheers, see it. And it was just too much. I had to leave. Since then, I've kind of hardened my shell to Islam. But that was when I was first starting to look into it. And wow, I'll never forget that.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, so let's move on. So at the moment, look, in defense of free speech, you and many other British patriots are working hard to create these social events, these rallies, these unite the kingdom rallies. And I think these are a really good effort. And of course, these are at risk because you never know if there's going to be some kind of threat, some kind of agitators who come in, people trying to undermine the event, cause violence, and so on. But you guys are doing these things. Tell me about this and the positive effects these are having. And there's another one coming up, I believe, on the 26th. Tommy's planning to be there. I'd love to have him on the show. I've been following Tommy
Oh,
since
yeah,
the EDL started. I've actually been following Tommy for about 12 years now. So,
yeah,
you know,
same,
uh,
same. So yeah, so I've had the privilege of attending both. So I went to the one in June the 1st. That was in Parliament Square. Absolutely amazing. We didn't expect the amount of people that was going to turn up. But again, it goes with what's going on in today. People are waking up to what's genuinely taking place. People are getting sick of kids being raped, killed, threatened, and all these people like Mohammed Hijab, Dili Hussein talking about Britain becoming an Islamic state or Europe being invaded to the point where it falls to Islam. And people are getting wise to it now and they're waking up to it. So they've had enough. And we're seeing a lot of people who genuinely did believe Tommy Robinson was racist and they believed what the mass media told them, that have looked into him and thought, he's saying what's on my mind. He's speaking the truth.
mhm.
Hang on a minute, I can resonate with this man. And these movements that and these rallies that we have taking place, they're joining the people, they're uniting people to come together to celebrate British culture, our British values, everything, our history, our heritage, and we're coming together as well for I wouldn't say a battle, but in knowing what's going on and what could take place in the future, that we are all against what's taking place and that we
Right.
want change. That's what we are advocating for. We want change. We are protesting in a peaceful manner. There's been no violence at any of these rallies. We've had people try and cause trouble, but you'll get that with everywhere you go. And the numbers that we've had, if you look at Notting Hill Carnival, this so-called uh, carnival where there's peace, love, harmony, and it's multicultural and everything's amazing.
And people get
Yeah,
have metal objects plunged into their bodies and they end up on operating tables or unalive.
well, we had two people die at the previous one, eight people were in hospital, 37 people stabbed in total, 347 arrests. Uh,
Mostly peaceful then, because there were thousands of people.
yeah, I
That's how
think
they do it, right?
there was 36 emergency workers attacked. We had CCTV footage of people defecating and urinating on people's walls outside their homes. So yeah, these events are completely different to what we're seeing with Tommy Robinson and Uniting the Kingdom, where
Hmm.
everyone has come. We've got families, people of all races, all backgrounds, all colours, creeds, and everyone has had an amazing day. They've watched the documentary. Tommy has always put on some music, some comedy, some kind of show to put on. So the last one was the documentary Silenced, which shown everyone what has taken place deep within the establishment, the judiciary, and our two-tier policing system. And yeah, it's just it's waking people up. People are watching live. Those people who didn't feel safe enough to come out or didn't want to get in trouble for attending, if they didn't come at June the 1st, they come in July. If they're not coming in July, they're coming to this one in October. So each
Hmm.
time we've gone from 40 to 50,000 on June the 1st to now 100,000 in July with 1 million people watching worldwide on just on one X platform. And then we've got this one happening on the 26th, which I believe will see 150,000 people plus.
I hope so. What do you think the reaction is from the obviously this carnival, this Caribbean carnival, whatever it was recently, where there was all this violence? That was passed off as well. It was there were 1 million people there, and only 1% of them died. So it's really peaceful. It was mostly peaceful. You know, um, but yeah, yet of course with the rally that you guys went to was demonized as far right, which implies Nazi, right? That's the strong implication there. and obviously patriotism, nationalism are demonized. What do you think, though, is the feeling of the establishment? Are they afraid? Do they do they take note of this? Do they are they concerned about this? Do you think that they realize that the jig's up, that no one's buying their story anymore? So, I mean, are they in fear? And do you think this is
Yeah,
going to have a positive effect in creating change and waking others up or encouraging others to speak up and to push back?
yeah. Don't get me wrong. I will be honest. I personally believe there's more to do. We can be doing more than what we should be doing. However, Tommy's one man. Everyone at the moment they're rallying around him. Um, but there should be more calls to do more things. I personally believe that, but I could be wrong. However, the the positive side of things with is like what you just said. Is it scaring the establishment? Yes. You can see that because literally within hours after Tommy doing the rally, the next day he's arrested on counter-terrorism charges because they are. I mean, they've even silenced him in the past. The documentary that he's shown on the 27th
Mhm.
of July, he written or signed something saying by a judge 3 years prior that he would not air it or release it into the public domain, and he did. And that's why we're seeing these arrests and these charges being put on in contempt of court. They're trying to dig up things from the past where they literally had to go and look into certain areas of where Tommy has been and try and find something to stick on him to
Mhm.
get him into prison because they want to silence him. We know
But
how.
this is what the Trotskyites did. You find me the man, I'll find you the crime. You start digging, you start looking, and
Yeah.
if you look hard enough, you're going to find in anyone's life, you're going to find things you can use to trump up charges. To excuse the pun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's done an amazing job confronting those that were responsible in the grooming gangs for this 1,400 young innocent girls that didn't get any justice for being raped, beaten by these Pakistani Muslim men in Rotherham and Telford and other places as well, which is still taking place in our towns and cities elsewhere. And I mean, he gets credit from us, those who attend the rallies, but he should be getting credit from politicians because he's the only one out there that is willing to speak or do anything about it. And he has gone to these perpetrators where they are working in their restaurants, confronting them live on camera to film in the 5-part series that he's done, The Rape of Britain. Um, and he's exposed Black Lives Matter. He's exposed Hope Not Hate. All these organizations which are supposed to be peaceful and bring about this amazing multicultural people, this utopian style society. Yet Tommy's exposed them all for who they really are, what they actually get up to. They even tried.
Multiculturalism does not work. It unless you all rally around one flag and culture. This creates a low trust society. This creates
Of course.
fragmentation and distrust. The safest environments, the safest countries are the most homogenous.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that people of different color or different faiths can get on. Of course they can. I mean, look at the
Hmm.
Sikhs, the Hindus, the Jews, they get the Christians, atheists. For the most part, we all get on in society, especially in Western democratic countries. There's just one demographic that refuses to do so. And people are waking up to this now. There's like people like Tommy, they're speaking about it. The establishment don't want him to talk about it because they've got their ways where they believe that migration is the benefits of or benefits the economy. They want more of it, especially the left. They're come in. We will look after you. And yet Tommy's saying, hang on a minute. You don't want this to keep happening because this, and this. Here's some statistics. Here's what they get up to. This is what they believe in, and people are going, really? Yeah, we don't want that no more. We don't want our culture disappearing. We don't want the UK to become an Islamic state. So, yes, he's a massive threat to the establishment. He has
Hmm.
woken up people by the masses recently, not just here in the UK, but worldwide. We've seen people attend the rallies from Australia, Canada, the States. Real beef with Big Don Keith. Do you know Don Keith from America?
I follow him on Twitter. Actually, people would be surprised. I follow a lot of the well-known American and UK and even another European commentators on politically. I do follow them actually, so I know many of the names.
Yeah,
So I do follow him. Yeah.
I met him and had a very long discussion with him when Tommy was arrested. I called for everyone on my previous channel to get down to Downing Street and let's protest outside. So we did that.
Yeah.
Richard Inman was there. Don Keefe, I've got him on my ex. If I message him right now saying, "Do you want to go on a live stream tomorrow?" He's waiting to come on with me because he promised me that he would come on with me. Just, you let me know the date, buddy. So
Would you be
his,
willing to come on with me on my channel,
I'll
you
have a
think?
chat with him. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll have a
I mean,
chat.
I'd be happy to bring these people on and have these discussions. I think here's an issue though. Something, for instance, when you read Marx, when you read the socialists that came after him, and you look at what happened in the education system starting in America in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, around the Darwinian era, let's say, moving forward, they would discuss the separation of church and state, which
Yeah.
in one sense is it's a very Western notion.
Mm.
However, when you go back a little bit further in history, there was no separation of church and state. Now, this is not to say that it's the identical concept as we have in Islam, where the church is the state and the state is the church. And you have a theocracy. Within the Christian concept in Europe, the church was, shall we say, a religious advisor to the state. It was the
Yeah.
moral bedrock of the state. And the people who ran the state would work within the moral framework given to them by the church, by their Christian beliefs. So this was not exactly the same,
Mm.
but you had a moral state
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you had a Christian idea of state. And as this is unraveling, of course, now you have these corruptions, of course, and unfortunately, the atheists pushed a lot of this. And the socialists and the atheists end up being the same group effectively. So, and well, they are. So, yeah, you had this unity of church and state versus the Muslim idea of a theocracy, which is Iran or Afghanistan. We've seen that, or ISIS. So we actually need to move away from this concept, the Marxist concept of separation of church and state, because they wanted to drive a wedge between the church, the morality of the church, the idea of, the way that the Christians would think about how they have moral laws so that they could impose their particular crazy socialist atheist ideas and replace those of Christianity in the minds of the people around the state.
Yeah. Definitely. Um, yeah. No, I totally agree with you.
Um, yeah, so free speech. Do you find that they're trying to silence Christians? You find that they have an actual attack on Christianity within the government?
Oh, there's a massive attack on Christianity, and you don't have to be a Christian to see that nowadays, which is amazing now because it's something that I didn't see coming. I thought Christianity was just going to get downtrodden on by everyone, including the atheists and non-believers and stuff like that. So I thought it wasn't just going to be the left and the Muslims and people of other faiths that are going to try and destroy Christianity or the church. But what we're seeing now is people who are atheists that celebrate the Christian values, the Judeo Christian principles that has shaped our culture, that has shaped our democracy, our laws, everything that we have here in the UK. They recognise that, and people are talking about it. So when we turn up to these rallies, and you've got the St George's Cross, you've got the Union Jack, which is behind me. You've got the cross in there. That's there
Hmm.
for a reason to remind us who we are, where we came from, and what our country is set up about. So even though obviously the Christians here, of course, are making noise, not enough, if you ask me, but they are making noise. You've also got people who are not Christians saying that they enjoy celebrating Christian culture and they're culturally a Christian. So years ago, they used to do surveys about people, asking people which faith do you belong to, and the majority of people who had been christened or baptized but never went to church again would still tick the "I'm a Christian" box. And you always had that saying as well here in the UK, whereas if you went into a pharmacy and they said, "What's your Christian name?" which is what's your first name, and that's all changed because you've seen the left attack it massively, the establishment attack it. It's been taken
Yeah.
out of schools. You only have certain separate schools now, whereas the state schools they taught Christianity. You used to pray at lunchtime. You used to have to sit in assemblies and sing hymns. that's all gone now. All the nativity plays, stuff like that, it's all gone. They've removed Christianity out of the most important sects of our society, especially, like I said, children's schools. So people are growing up blinded by that, and it's become quite the norm, if you like, to reject Christianity or attack it. But now, on the establishment scale, you're seeing people being arrested for praying in their minds. We had a woman arrested on two occasions for praying outside an abortion clinic in her head, not with words, but just in her head, silent prayer. Another man
Right.
as well, arrested for preaching, just for preaching in a town centre. He got arrested for a public order offence, a breach of the peace, or something like that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're offending those abortionists and you're making them feel uncomfortable. You're not allowed to make other people feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
like rapists or PDF
You
files.
can't call them that though.
However,
They're called minor attracted persons. They're called MAPs. Don't.
no, that would be minor attracted PDF files. It's
Yeah.
just trying to be more precise about the name.
So yeah, I mean, again, that's the satanic wokery that we're seeing now. People calling them maps instead of PDF files. Um,
I
yeah.
just
So
want to wonder, this is not going to work. Yeah, no, um, I was told earlier that this application has quirks and yeah, I'm having a little problem with it. So much of my system is locked up and frozen. This window works, but nothing else does. I was just going to mention, you mentioned, so you go to the US, and I need to do a talk in the US. I actually prepped all the notes and I haven't delivered it yet. But the US, they used to have prayer services in the Capitol building. You'd have 2,000 people celebrating on a Sunday Mass
yeah.
in the Capitol building in the US. And now, of course, they the whole changed the whole idea, the separation of church and state. There's been no, there must be no mention of religion. But the U.S. was founded as a religious Christian state, and that was the majority religion. Every there was no equality of religions. There was the supremacy of Christianity and the tolerance of everything else. But here in Poland, I was going to show people a photo of my nephew. He's like 6 years old. He has at school, he's seven, 6.5. He has religious instruction at school, I think 3 times a week. They have religious classes. Poland teaches this to its school students, right? And you see, for instance, you go to Florida, you look at the state motto, "In God We Trust," will be on the official, you'll see it on the official emblems and such. And it didn't get there by accident, but yet they've somehow fooled people into thinking that that shouldn't be there. It's just an accident, and they shouldn't think that way. But really, it's the fact that we've abandoned that approach that has led to this downward spiral. And yeah, do you feel? Because I think I get the feeling it's just a very faint feeling, but I do see this resurgence, and I see the attacks from the other side. One, because they smell blood, there's weakness certainly, but on the other hand, they feel like they are close to achieving their goal. That's another, but also they feel that they have to push because they see that we are fighting back. They see the pushback coming, and social media, X is the one platform, even YouTube, despite the censorship, seems to be changing things. We see a resurgence in France. You see Germany. You see, I mean, definitely other countries as well are starting to say, "Hold on, wait. We happen to like our culture. It's okay to be white." And sometimes we don't want all of these crazy foreigners. Do you find that social media, and how are you using social media to change the fight against mass media?
So one thing that I've been doing quite recently, which has got me into quite a lot of trouble, but I do it anyway. I've been downloading quite a lot of videos off X, and then I put them up in my Facebook stories. Now, if you was to pull it up on your Facebook newsfeed on your main profile, it would automatically get flagged up by AI. However, if you put it in your stories, 9 times out of 10 it goes undetected and it stays on there for 24 hours and disappears. So I've been taking the majority of the content I produce off of X. I download it through some kind of system through Google. Just type in Twitter downloader, MP3 downloader, or MP4 downloader, and I'll pull it up on Facebook. And I've been teaching people that way through my Facebook what's really going on. Because, like you said, mainstream the mainstream media are saying one thing, but what's happening in reality is completely different. So
Mhm.
when I'm putting these stories up, I'm getting people message me all the time, friends and people who have been on my Facebook for years that I barely spoken to. They're messaging me now saying, "Where did you get that video from? What's this about?" And I'm beginning to start talking to them. And I've also had quite a lot of people ask me about Christianity, especially recently in the past 2 years. I've had people say, "Can you tell me a bit more about this? Which is the best Bible to read? Which is what's your favorite gospel? Where should I go to for this information and stuff like that?" So a lot more people are getting interested in that. Obviously, with my YouTube channel, I'm building that to try and educate people more about Islam, like yourself. Though I'm nowhere near as good as you, Lloyd, but I know enough
Mhm.
to bring up some topics to Muslims, non-Muslims alike, but also to preach about politics, patriotism, and Christianity all mixed into one. So some people say that you can't be a Christian and be into politics, and there's many Christians I know that won't actually vote. They say they will leave it into God's hands. But I said, well, someone's got to vote anyway, so you will get some of them. But I believe that obviously, in the name, the Patriotic Christian, that you must be heavily invested into what's going on into your country and who's in charge. Because if you're
I
not,
find that level of passivity is just cowardice or neglect. It's negligence to say that, well, because you've been given the capacity to act in a moral manner, and if you say, well, I'm just gonna ignore all of that, and things are happening, evil is acting in the world, and you are just gonna stand by. You're just literally gonna stand by and do nothing while
yeah.
evil is active in the world. I think that that's negligence. That is just. I believe that's wrong. I
And
think we need
what
to. You
what
still
the
have to look. You still have to act. I mean, now the outcome may be not something you can determine, but you still need to do what is moral. If you stand by and say, "Well, I did nothing," you're like what's the parable of the servants given the coins? This
uh,
guy got his one coin, just buried it, and said, "Well, yep, that's it."
yeah. I can't remember that
Okay.
parable as such. But what we're seeing is that the main reason for that, though, Lloyd, is people on the left who are Christians. They all use verses out of context, like, "Oh, we're not allowed to judge. It says, do not judge your brother. Take the plank of dust out your own eye before you take the speck out of dust out your brother's." And then they'll say, "Oh, Jesus said to love your enemy and to love your neighbor and to pray for them, pray for those who persecute you." Um, so we hear those verses being taken out of context, and they'll
Hmm.
literally. That's why you've got some of these priests now saying, "Jesus said, do not judge, so we don't judge people. Jesus said, love your enemies, so we should love absolutely everyone, no matter what they do, no matter what they say." And you'll get that level. Literally, take that, interpret that as complete genuine. So I mean, of course the words are genuine, but what they'll do is they'll take it out of context and they'll say,
Hmm.
right, we need to wrap our arms around those that are stabbing the crap out of us and our kids, and yeah, let's
Yeah.
just look after them, let's
As
house
if
them.
we're not supposed to make judgments, as if we're not supposed to make some kind of moral calculus and then act on those things, as if you're not supposed to correct people, you're not supposed to act against evil. That's, I think, again, that's a. You've got the left again. You've got the communists who've tried to redefine what Christianity is as something that's incredibly passive, so that you won't get in their way. By the same token, I find that within Western culture, and I'm speaking as an African here, that winning seems to be wrong. It's like it's wrong if you're a Westerner to win because now you've got to let all of the other people win, and it was wrong of you to have won in the first place. When really it's just a matter of it's guilt. It's that white guilt. They try to guilt you into being passive so that they can take everything from you. And yeah, I mean, if you win on merit, you win on merit. That's it. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
thought.
what was I going to say? Yeah, there's many people like Bob from Speaker's Corner, um, Bishop Kai Dewar as well, who I'll be having on. He spoke at the last rally. They turn around and what they say is the masculinity has left the church. The the actual strength of Christianity, if you like, the fight, the grit. of Christianity has gone. And people have just gone so soft, so woke, that they are being trampled all over on. And then with that too, they're trampling on Christ. They're trampling on the church. They're trampling
Hmm.
on our whole faith. And we should be able to stand up against that with the same might and the same determination as the Crusades did. Because if we don't, then we'll lose it all. And that's what I completely agree
Yeah.
with them on that. Of course, we know some of the history of the Crusades ain't that pretty. But when we're talking about in regards of protecting Christianity, protecting Rome, protecting all that is at the heart of the faith, we must do so with so much conviction and passion
Hmm.
that we don't let any of this woke nonsense lift take us away from the
Yeah.
mission that we're supposed
Yeah.
to.
A state is allowed to defend its borders. A state is allowed to fight to defend its people,
Of course.
and you are a subject of the state. You follow the rules of the state, and of course, if you did nothing while someone was harming your family in front of you, I think you would be guilty of moral cowardice,
Mm.
of a grave sin of not defending and standing up for your family and standing up for what is good and right and moral. But yeah, there's certain, unfortunately, we've been given a false view of what it is to be Christian by our enemies. Our enemies have defined for us what these things are supposed to mean. And I think you don't listen to your enemies on issues like that. Thank you, Mary Alex, for that. I appreciate that donation. That was €2 and 49 cents. Thank you very, very much. No, we can't listen to our enemies. At some point, you push back. I mean, I've had I've had an interesting life. My past life was very, very interesting. I've discussed some of it, but yeah, I've protected people. I've and someone has to stand in that gap. I guarantee you, a miracle is probably not going to happen. Now, on its own, if you stand by and do nothing, because evil can succeed if good men do nothing, and a lot of people are good people that just do nothing. So, yeah, I think that's wishful thinking. I think that's childish level of thinking. Yeah. So, do you find that X platforms like YouTube, live streams discussing these problems as opposed to being silent actually are effective? Do you think that they help to push back against the silence, the censorship, against the false propaganda? Are we winning? Are we having a positive effect?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to sort of find some positives and also give people ideas for why we do this, what's important then to speak, and what we can do as well to change things around. Because if we don't, we're being pushed into a corner,
Mm.
and when they have that, they're going to silence us. And it, this process always just ratchets on. They won't stop until you make them stop.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, again, like I said with the rallies, we can do more. But yes, we are having you being able to use platforms like X and YouTube. We are getting in the same direction as winning. I would say we're getting onto the road to start winning back this battle that we're seeing. Of course, we've got a long way to go. There's still people that do need to wake up and learn the truth, what's going on, or
Right.
invest themselves in a bit more. Maybe like Nigel Farage, he should stop this pettiness between him and Tommy and what he has against him. And instead of pretending to hate the guy just for the sake of a few votes or the media attacking him, he should just say, look, I completely agree with what the guy says, because they both say the same thing. And Tommy was actually saying before Reform UK, before Nigel come back and stood as a candidate, he said to everyone, when you go to the ballot box, this was June the 1st. He said, June the 1st, he said, when you go to the ballot box and vote in July, tick none of the above. That's what he said. That was the plan. Then in July, before July, just when Nigel announced that he was coming to stand up as a candidate for reform, Tommy said, everyone vote reform. I don't care what Nigel says or thinks about me. I don't care. You all need to vote reform. That is the only way that we're going to be able to start the work needed to save this country. And of course, many people listened, and many people in the movement listened as well. And I believe wholeheartedly, if it wasn't because of Tommy, Reform wouldn't have got half the votes of what they got. Most of
Hmm.
it was because of Tommy, people like Tommy, like Katie Hopkins, Paul Fort, Maya Tusi, other people like that who are independent. They have platforms on YouTube and X that have said, get behind Nigel. He's the only party that we, or only hope that we have in this election. So they won like that. Sorry, they didn't win, but they got the votes that they did because of that. So there's a lot of pettiness that needs to be put aside. There's still people who are atheists saying, oh, I don't feel comfortable with identifying as a cultural Christian, or I don't want to go to the rally because I don't like Tommy. I mean, it's not Tommy. I don't go because I like Tommy, because I think he's an amazing person behind all this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I believe he is. However, the reason that I go to these rallies is because of the key message that Tommy portrays. It's the same values and principles that the majority of the British public are worried about losing. So that's what I can resonate with. I resonate with the message, the same as everyone else who goes to these things. We put the pettiness aside between everyone and we get there.
Yeah.
But we're seeing again unity now becoming between the Sikhs and the Hindus. We're seeing Sikhs and Christians and atheists coming together now, saying, "Well, hang on, I didn't know much about." So in the movement that I'm part of, with what they call the Tommy movement, if you like, that the rallies have formed. There's people who I speak to that will say, "I didn't know that much about Sikhism, but I do now because so
Hmm.
and so was there." And yeah, us Sikhs, Hindus, Christians, and atheists and Jews need to stick together because we're against the same enemy. And this goes back like hundreds of years, as you know, Lloyd, with Sikhism and Hindus especially, and Jews. Um, but yeah, so these platforms are great. Will they last? I don't know. We've seen what happened with Brazil. They've already stopped X, or Elon Musk being able to have that platform there, unless you got a VPN, of course. But of course, you'll get locked up if you use X there. Will it happen in the UK? Possibly. If they do, I believe that would be the tipping edge of Keir Starmer playing with people's freedoms. I think a lot. I think that would be a big mistake for Keir to make. So I don't know whether he would. But then again, with the recent events of what's happened, taking money off the old age pensioners, locking up patriots, I wouldn't put it past him. So let's just hope that whilst we can have these platforms, that people do take advantage, people stick together. There's like I said, no more petty arguments between people. People stick together. Um, And yeah,
Yeah.
just speak up when you can. Don't be afraid. Don't just because the establishment have changed a few laws and they put labels on you, calling you racist, this, that, and the other, far right, try and make you guilty for being white. Ignore all that and speak up, speak out. Don't worry about losing your job. And that might be hard because you might think, well, how on earth am I going to feed myself? Worry about something else. Stand for the truth. That's what you need to worry about because when you find yourself hiding away from being able to speak out or not wanting to say this or speak about this, that, and the other, you're just as bad as those that are putting a stop to it. They're silencing you. You're letting them win. So we need to speak the truth, even if it costs us. If it costs us our job, costs us our freedoms, so be it. The more it happens, if everyone did that, this will be over within no time because eventually something has to give. Like you said, with rubber band, it has to break at some point. The more tension that happens, it has to break. So we got to
No, I think so. Today
continue.
I watched this short talk by Bernadette Spofford, known as Bernie. She'd posted after the incident in Southport with the three girls who were harmed by this migrant. Remember, there was a false report that was carried by Channel 3 Now News that it was a Muslim migrant that committed the crime.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And she published that. I mean, that was a legitimate news source that published it.
Yeah.
But she said, if this is true, she qualified. She said, if this is true, this is going to cause a backlash. Now, this is just an opinion. It is not an incitement to anything. She's
No.
saying if this is true. She didn't say this is true. There should be a backlash. She said if this is true. And then afterwards, when the reports were circulating that this report was false, she deleted it. And a
Mm.
few days later, the police came and arrested her aggressively, arrested her, put her in prison. She was sentenced
Wow.
for this tweet. I mean, this is a shocking episode, and obviously this is an effort to intimidate others
You
as
have to
well.
send me that because I'll.
To make an example, I just dropped it in the chat. Let me just send this to you as well. I'll send you this link right now. In fact, I've just sent it to you right now, and it is a frightening story. I've just dropped you the link. So yeah, so what they can't arrest all of us. I mean, there is that. They can't
Yeah.
arrest all of us, but also I want to give people a story that I've told before. It's about the Ash conformity experiments. Now, of course, I may get one or two small details wrong, but there's a lot of bad science out there. I think we know by now that something like 50% of all scientific experiments of these papers that are out there are fraudulent. So there's a lot of fraudulent science, but this is a particular set of experiments that's been repeated reliably. So this guy takes so Ash and his team they take a bunch of students and other volunteers and other people who are unwitting, and they put them in a room and they look at the power of peer pressure and propaganda. So they put them in a room and they'll say, for instance, here's a duck, here's a bunny, and here's a horse on the board, and they'll point and they'll say, what animal is this? Right? They'll point at the bunny, and then the whole team, everyone else in the room goes, that's a horse. And then there's one guy who's not part of the experiment, who's not aware of what's going on, and he'll go, but that's a bunny. And what happens is shame and peer pressure forces him eventually to comply, to go along with the lie because
I've
of
seen
fear.
this. Something similar. Yeah.
It's real. So what they found was it was actually very easy to get people to go along with the lie,
Yeah.
and people would deny the evidence of their eyes because they didn't want to offend, or there would be some sort of social cost or emotional price to pay, if they had to resist, if they had to become dissenters. So what he discovered was, what is interesting though, is the corollary of that, the opposite of that. He discovered that if one person, just one person, stood up, whether it's a crowd of five or a crowd of 10,000 or 10 million or 100 million, if one person stood up and said, no, that is a bunny, that is not a horse, you people are out of your minds. What happened is he discovered that the effect of the propaganda, the effect of the fake news that was being broadcast was reduced by 80%.
Mm.
So there was this had a massive effect on the ability to spread these kind of lies, but also that it woke up significant numbers of people. It snapped them up because someone took the lead. Other people were like, okay, yeah, I agree, and they suddenly snapped out of the spell. So the power of one voice is significant. That grain of sand, think of yourself as a grain of sand. Imagine two, three, 4 grains of sand in your gearbox. You're
Yeah.
not going to be a happy man. Those gears will grind. So, a lot of us, we are going to be the grains of sand in the gearbox. Be a grain of sand. Don't worry that you're not a desert, but seriously, if you're the grain of sand and you bring your friends along with you, you're going to grind those gears to a halt. And they know that the truth. Think about it. All of these ideologies, all of these crazy people, they're fighting against Christian doctrine at the end of the day. They're fighting against truth. They know exactly what it is that is reality, and that is truth, and that is Christianity, the mindset, the worldview that comes out of the Christian worldview. So they are the exact opposite. So look, just you've got to stand up, use your free speech, talk,
Yeah.
use X, use platforms, follow others, talk about it, share these things. Once these ideas are seen, they can't be unseen. They can be denied, but they can't be unseen.
So,
Force them to fight and react. So use your free speech. I just thought that would be your thoughts on that. We can wind down at this point,
yeah.
but yeah,
That,
your thoughts.
that's a perfect analogy. That is, yeah. I've seen the same experiment go on. So it's a social experiment, isn't it? See how people's behaviour reacts to lies. But when you, like you said, when you have that one person who's willing to say, call out a spade for being a spade, it can
Hmm.
affect the whole dynamics of that behavior, if you like. So, yeah, no, that was a perfect way. And it's how we all should be. We should just stop being afraid now. if it costs us anything, if there are consequences to us speaking, then we got to take them as just take them on the head. And the more of us that do it, the less of us that can be put inside. Like you said, they can't lock us all up. So we need to, instead of waiting for the next protest to happen or the next stabbing to take place, which is quite worrying because if you look at it this way, Lloyd, we are one terrorist attack away from the whole West descending into chaos. You imagine if something like 9/11, something on the scale of 9/11 took place tomorrow. It wouldn't
You
just
know,
be America that would kick off. It would backtrack right here to the UK. It would go all across Europe
look at
because
Southport. I think right now people are on edge because they're going after the children. The LGBTQ community is going after the children. The child molesters with scalpels are going after the children. And I think this is where people are starting to draw a line because they are seeing the mutilation that's occurring. FGM is bad, but that 5-year-old boy, chop off his willy. That 9-year-old girl, yeah, puberty blockers, and if she's older than that, chop off her breasts. But FGM is bad. Can't have that. But yeah, if you're white and Western, we can remodel your body with a scalpel. So I think at this point, I think we've reached kind of we're getting close to that edge, and I think they they're starting to lose some control. They lost control of the narrative. I think through platforms like X, even YouTube, even Facebook. Despite the censorship, I don't use Facebook. It's just I would get mass reported and banned on a regular basis. Was not worth it.
I know that feeling.
But which is crazy. But yeah, but I think I'm feeling optimistic for the first time in a long time. I'm not saying it won't get darker. I'm not saying it won't get bad. I'm not saying we're going to come out of this unscathed or peacefully necessarily. And the closer you get to the crunch, unfortunately, the more aggressive your response has to be. But we may be past the point of conversation in some contexts. So that's unfortunate, but that's how that is. But find your backbone, stand up for your culture. And I mean, look, bluntly, it's okay to be white, quite bluntly. And I say that because half my family's white.
And
So
British.
sorry.
And British, because that's another thing they're doing
Yep.
here at the moment is they bring up slavery, and they seem to forget that the Britons were the first to abolish slavery, but we're getting the left, white people as well, the white politicians that will openly talk about how their ancestors were very bad people for the slave industry, and they'll condemn absolutely anything. They're tearing down statues. We've seen that during the COVID lockdowns in
Hmm.
Bristol, not too far from where I live. They tore down. I can't remember which statue it was, but they tore down a statue because he was linked to the slave trade. And then they were calling for Winston
Well,
Churchill.
you know what? Muhammad was linked to the slave trade. Muhammad's wife was linked to the slave trade. Muhammad's followers were linked to the slave trade. Muslims still have had the longest running, largest slave trade in history. And Muslim countries are still conducting slavery today. Slavery is bigger today than it was 200 years ago. So I think we need to let people know about the Muslim slave trade. We need to teach people about the Muslim jihad. There is no such thing as peaceful Islam. It has never been peaceful.
Never
Edward
would.
Colston is what James Vickers is telling us. Edward
Yeah, that's
Colston.
the Colston
No,
statue.
don't let them destroy your culture. Don't let them destroy your history. I consider myself westernized. Yes, I'm African. I'm not British. I'm not German. I am not Polish, most certainly. But I was raised with Western culture. I believe in Western culture, and I've seen the I'll be polite, the dysfunction in African culture. This is not something I want. I have lived in the Middle East for 11 years. I've traveled extensively. I've seen the dysfunction, the inherent dysfunction in Arab Western culture. Sorry, Arab Muslim culture. Now, this is not to say that Dubai isn't a great place. It can be, but because it's using a lot of Western ideas,
Yeah.
it's run by a lot of Westerners, right? So, yeah, be proud of your culture. We should wind down here. It's going on a couple of hours. It's been a really good conversation. But your final thoughts from you as to just something optimistic. Your thoughts and your positive thoughts about where these community events will go, these rallies will go. and how this will affect feelings around the country, patriots around the country, and possibilities for revival. Just a final thought on that topic.
So the love for patriotism now is growing in the UK. Like I said, people are waking up to the truth. They want to speak out. They want to be with people who have the same way of thinking, who are understanding what's going on. They don't want to be isolated like what the establishment are trying to make people feel. They don't want to be silenced. So, and it's not just the attack on the culture as well. We're being attacked economically as well. We're being attacked by stringent draconian laws that are being put in place. It's everything, every kind of aspect of the British life is being undermined and taken away from us as we know it. So we need to stick together. Obviously, more people on the left, they need to sort out whatever their beliefs are, get to the truth, and come back to the old ways. Love your ancestors, what they did. Be proud of our heritage. Be proud of our values, our culture. And like I said, put all our burdens aside, pettiness aside, whatever differences we have had in the past. We need to focus now on the one mission, which is protecting and preserving the Britain we love and not letting it fall to a communist ideology or an Islamic ideology. We need to stand up for our children and the most vulnerable in our society.
Hmm.
So by doing this, we need to refuse to be silenced, refuse tyranny and oppression from this authoritarian, totalitarian, draconian state. And we
Hmm.
need to do whatever we possibly can to attend rallies, protests, sign petitions. We've got the pledge, which has just been done by Richard Inman and Paul Thorpe, where you can go and sign that, which is absolutely a beautiful pledge, which has 50 points on it. And if you agree with each point, sign it, share it with your friends. But when you sign these things and attend these things, don't just come on your own. Tell others about it. We need to be so proactive with all that we do now to save this country. We can't leave one stone unturned. So we need to do what we can, put burdens aside, and just show strength. Do not, for 1 minute, do what the establishment want you to do, which is remain silent and do as you're told, because that's that's how they'll win. I don't think they'll win. I'm optimistic that we will. We've got a hell of a way to go. Like you were saying earlier, there will be martyrs. There are going to be bumps in the road. It's going to get very dark at one point. In my opinion, there could be some kind of civil unrest in the future for this to
Hmm.
take any effect. That's probably the only way because the establishment are that stubborn and they believe that they have changed already and that everyone's accepting it. It's going to take the fight back for them to realize that we're not. So when that does happen, yes, there's going to be horrible things take place, but we need to override that, overcome it together. And it's only like they say, together, united we stand. What was it? What was it? United we stand.
Divided we
Divided
fall.
we fall. So that's that. I want to use that.
Yeah, there's always the manipulation that happens. It's like you have to care about this cause that's happening in Papua New Guinea. On a practical level, the only people you can truly care about is yourself, the family that is closest to you. You need to maintain your health. You need to maintain your effectiveness so that you can do what you need to do for those closest to you. Then there is your family and maybe your colleagues and your neighbors. So the amount of people you can genuinely show care for is a very small amount of people, relatively speaking. You can donate to charities, but when you are expected to sacrifice everything for the cause of some rando across the world who wants everything, you are being manipulated. That is not compassion. That is not charity. That is not care. That is suicidal empathy. That is unthinking, destructive manipulation that you are falling for. At some point, you're going to have to make choices about what's valuable, and then you're going to have to say, "Look, I care. I will send £5 by, I'll on the website. I'll donate to charity, but otherwise, I do not care. This is not my problem." Or others will deal with that, those who can. I have to deal with problems closer to home. At some point, you need to batten down the hatches and say, look, I've got a storm I have to deal with. I cannot worry about those issues or those people. Those are not my concern. Yes, I have human concern. I understand their plight, but I also have issues. And that's at some point you've got to say, look, we deal with our issues close to home before we can deal with that. Just like on a plane, put on your own mask before you put on the masks of others. Because if you're unconscious, you can't help your children. Simple.
That's it.
So at some point, you're going to say, I don't care. I don't care. Those people, they have to wait. I don't care. We're dealing with our issues. If we are weak, if we are cancer ridden, if we are overrun, we can't help those others. It's simple. We need to be strong so that we can help others. Otherwise, but also you need to be rational and smart and prudent. So yeah, at some point, and I say this cautiously, but also because I use a lot of sarcasm on the channel. But sometimes you got to find your inner asshole and you've got to connect with him. So yeah, final word, final word. Sorry.
Yeah, final words. And always remember, guys, Christ is already victorious. He's already won. So, as a Christian, we have got nothing to lose and nothing to worry about anyway. So, don't take things too seriously in regards of threats or anything like that. Just remember, Christ is already victorious. We're already saved. Everything's gonna be great eventually.
Yeah, Binu thinks we're racists. Um, because Binu wants free money, Binu wants free house, Binu wants a white woman, Binu wants, he wants a free medical, assistance card. He wants a free cell phone because Binu wants white people to pay for his life.
And he wants everyone
So yeah,
to
look,
visit
they
his
try
life.
to shame you. They're going to try to shame you, right? It's very simple. You've got a black guy from Africa talking to a white guy from the UK. I don't think he's a racist, and I'm not a racist. We're discussing genuine issues. We're discussing people from the third world who are abusing the charity, the compassion of others, and you've got governments who, of course, are neglecting their duties. So look, without, yeah, I didn't want to turn this into a long polemic, so we'll leave it at that. But guys, sometimes you have to think about yourself, your people. These are tribalists, right? And when they're in power, they're going to think about their tribe only, and that you will be discarded. You will be a fourth-class citizen. At some point, you need to think about yourself because they forced you into that position. And desperate times, desperate measures, and also you need to understand you're being manipulated. At some point, learn to say no. Learn to say no. That's wrong. Simple. That is wrong. No. Done. End of discussion. So, guys, we leave it at that. And in fact, Matt, you know what? Matt Walsh just came out of the movie "Am I Racist?" You know, um, remember we showed the graphs a couple of days ago. We did the talk, and I showed the graphs. White people are the least racist group on the planet. The most racist are people like Binu from India. India turns out to be the most racist single group in the world, and then of course black people, you know, yeah, they and you look at the in-group preference, look at white people, they treat everyone fairly, and then you look at the other groups, they have vast disparities in how they view other groups, and white people always the ones who are getting the short end of the stick. The research is there, but of course it's something you can't talk about because, well, uncomfortable facts. But guys, yeah, thank you. I've banned Bino. He
Well,
can get.
thank you for having me on again, Lloyd. It's a pleasure. Obviously, I'll be on the next stream with Thunderous One, so I'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah, so take care, guys. See you all. Thank you very much. See you guys in a couple of weeks. Take care.